They seem cold, but it's not what you think. At first glance, the dismissive avoidant can feel like a wall, emotionally self-contained, private, unreachable. They may look like they don't need anyone. They say things like, "I'm not ready," or "I just like my space." And when closeness threatens their emotional distance, they withdraw, quietly and completely. But here's what no one tells you. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding what closeness represents. Because for them, intimacy doesn't feel safe. It feels like exposure. When they were young, love may have felt conditional, or worse, invasive. They learned early that vulnerability wasn't safe, that to depend on someone was to be let down, that to show emotion was to give away power. So they built a world inside themselves, a world where autonomy was survival, where self-reliance was identity, where the safest place to be was alone, even when it hurt. And in that world, connection became complicated. They crave closeness, but fear it. They want love, but distrust it. They long to be known, but protect themselves from being seen. So when you try to love them, it can feel like chasing a shadow. You offer warmth, and they grow distant. You offer patience, and they grow silent. You offer closeness, and they begin to run. Not because they don't care, but because deep down, something in them whispers, "If you really knew me, you'd leave." And this is where most people give up. They take the distance personally. They interpret the silence as rejection. They think, if they wanted me, they'd show it. But the truth is more complex. Because for a dismissive avoidant, the act of opening their heart isn't instinctive. It's terrifying. It goes against everything their nervous system was trained to do. It means letting go of control. It means being seen in their most raw, unguarded form. And that feels like a threat, not a gift. Unless they encounter one thing. The one thing that doesn't force them to open, but makes them want to. Why chasing makes them retreat, and the moment that changes everything. When you move closer, they move away. And it's not because they don't feel something. It's because they feel too much, too fast. To the dismissive avoidant, emotional intimacy feels like quicksand. Every step closer threatens their sense of self. Every vulnerable moment feels like a trap. So when someone leans in, with questions, affection, or even love, it overwhelms their internal alarm system. They shut down, detach, sometimes even push you away with coldness or confusion. Not because you did something wrong, but because they're bracing for something they can't name. Abandonment masked as connection, judgment masked as closeness. They've been taught, consciously or not, that emotional dependency equals weakness, that needing someone means losing yourself, that love, ultimately, ends in pain. So when you chase them, even gently, even lovingly, they don't feel safer. They feel cornered. And when you try to prove you're safe, they question it more. But something changes when they experience a kind of presence that doesn't chase, doesn't perform, doesn't push for closeness, or back away from distance. It's calm, it's steady, it's unbothered by silence. It doesn't seek validation because it doesn't need to be chosen to feel worthy. And for the dismissive avoidant, that's disarming because it's the first time someone sees them without trying to fix them. The first time someone stays without demanding access. The first time someone lets them come forward at their own pace. And that moment, when they feel safe not being pursued, is the exact moment they consider coming closer. The one energy that doesn't trigger their defenses and pulls them in instead. So what is it? What's the one thing that finally reaches a dismissive avoidant without threatening their independence, without setting off alarm bells, without making them run? It's emotional sovereignty, not indifference, not detachment, but something far more powerful: a grounded, quiet certainty in yourself. This is the energy that doesn't say, "Please love me so I can feel whole." It says, "I already am whole, but if you'd like to meet me in the middle, I'm here." It's this kind of presence that changes everything, not because it forces closeness, but because it doesn't need it to feel valuable. You see, dismissive avoidants are highly attuned to emotional pressure. They can sense hidden need. They recoil when someone's self-worth depends on their love, not because they're cruel, but because they don't trust anyone to hold them, and themselves at the same time. But when you don't need them to respond a certain way, when your self-trust is stronger than your fear of loss, you stop activating their defenses. Your energy feels safe, not because you're perfect, but because you're emotionally non-invasive. You offer space without disappearing. You offer warmth without needing permission. You offer honesty without control. And slowly, the avoidant begins to notice something unfamiliar. They feel drawn to you, not because you chased, but because you didn't. They feel safe around you, not because you tried to soothe them, but because you were already at peace with yourself. They begin to wonder, why does this feel different? And that curiosity, that quiet pull towards someone who doesn't abandon themselves for love, is how their heart begins to open, not in a grand, dramatic moment, but in tiny shifts, in the way they stay a little longer, in the way they begin to initiate, in the way they don't hide when things get close. Not this time, because now, closeness doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like freedom. The shift from survival to connection, what makes you the exception? For most of their lives, dismissive avoidants operate in survival mode. Not visibly, not dramatically, but quietly, beneath the surface. Their nervous system is wired for emotional self-protection. They read between the lines. They anticipate rejection before it happens. They don't ask for reassurance, because deep down, they've already assumed it won't come. It's not that they're cold. It's that they've lived too long in a world that punished vulnerability. And yet, something happens when they encounter someone who no longer plays by the old emotional rules. You don't punish their silence. You don't beg for connection. You don't use closeness as currency. You just are steady, attuned, unshaken by their emotional weather. And that's when a different part of them begins to stir. The part that's been buried under years of isolation. The part that still longs to be met, but never felt safe enough to reach. They begin to associate you with safety, not because you fixed them, but because you never tried to. You let them have their space, but not because you were afraid of scaring them away. You gave them space because you weren't afraid of being alone either. That changes everything, because now they're not connecting to survive. They're connecting by choice. And that is intimacy, not forced, not rushed, not dependent on intensity or emotional highs, but chosen, mutual, safe. You become the exception, not because you did something special to win them over, but because you did something rare. You stayed deeply connected to yourself, while giving them the dignity of choosing connection on their own. And for someone who's only known love as pressure, panic, or loss, that's the only kind of closeness they can trust. What they feel but rarely say, and how you'll know their heart is opening. They may not say it out loud, but when a dismissive avoidant feels safe with you, they feel it everywhere. In the quiet way, they linger longer than they used to. In the subtle shift from avoidance to presence. In the absence of excuses, they start doing something they rarely do. They stay. It's not big, dramatic gestures. It's the small consistencies, the texts they initiate, the honest responses they never used to offer, the questions they start asking about you, not just to be polite, but to understand. And beneath all of it is one unspoken truth. You didn't force their heart open. You didn't demand closeness. You didn't prove your worth. You just stayed steady in your own. And that steadiness, that quiet, grounded presence, made their nervous system exhale. Not all at once, not with fireworks, but in moments that feel disarmingly normal. Moments like them sharing something they usually hide, them asking, "Are you okay?" and meaning it, them missing you and letting it show. These are the ways they begin to say, "You matter to me," without saying it the traditional way. Because for the dismissive avoidant, words can feel risky, but actions born of safety, those are their love letters. And if you're attuned enough, you'll read every line. What to do with their love, and why you must stay rooted in yourself. So they begin to open. Little by little, they soften. They stay. They reach. They start to trust something they've never fully trusted before. Emotional closeness that doesn't come with a price. But now comes the part that most people don't talk about. How you hold their love determines if it lasts. Because even when they open, even when they begin to give, their fears haven't vanished. Their instincts are still wired for retreat when things feel too intense. So the most important thing you can do is keep doing what made you safe in the first place. Stay rooted in your own emotional clarity. Don't mold yourself to their moods. Don't chase connection, invite it. Don't collapse into their world. Let them walk into yours. You see, when a dismissive avoidant begins to love you, it's not always graceful. It's clumsy. It's quiet. It's sometimes confusing. Because their love won't always look like reassurance. It might look like stability, or consistency, or the simple act of not leaving when things get hard. But what they need most is your grounded presence. Not perfection, not constant praise, but a relationship where you are not lost in them. Because the moment they feel you are sacrificing yourself to keep them, they begin to disconnect again, not out of cruelty, but fear. So when they love you, really love you, don't drop your boundaries to make it easier. Don't abandon your needs to protect theirs. Don't shrink. Let their love meet you in your full height. Let them feel what it's like to love someone who doesn't vanish into their fear, but stands with quiet strength in the face of it. That is how their heart stays open. They ever loved you. You'll know it in their silence. They may never be the loudest with their love. They may never flood you with romantic confessions or chase you with grand apologies. But if you ever reached a dismissive avoidant's heart, you'll feel it in their quiet. You'll feel it in the way they hesitate before pulling away, in the way they try, even if they stumble, in the way their patterns start to shift, not overnight, but inwardly, meaningfully. Because for them, love isn't an escape. It's an exposure. It pulls them out of a world they've spent a lifetime building walls around. And if you were the one who walked through those walls without tearing them down, if you offered connection without pressure, space without abandonment, and love without self-erasure, then no matter how guarded they remain, you left something behind. Not a wound, not a story of being too much, but a memory of someone who didn't demand love, only invited it. And that's the one thing their nervous system remembers, even long after you're gone. It may be weeks later, months, or years, but there will come a moment, quiet and unspoken, when they think of you, not with panic, not with regret, but with stillness. Because in a world that made them believe they had to be alone to feel safe, you were the one who made connection feel like home. And maybe they never said it. Maybe they never will. But if they ever loved you, you'll know it in the way they remember you. Without defense, without distance, without forgetting. Because the one thing that finally opens a dismissive avoidant's heart is someone who never tried to own it. only offered theirs freely.